Right. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a confession to make. It's something I'm not proud of, but it's important. I've been hiding this from my friends, my family, and most importantly from you, my viewers. It's been eating me up inside. I've likely let slip clues from time to time. I'm hardly a conspiratorial expert. I'm sure some of you will already be able to guess at what I'm about to say. But I need to get this out in the open. I play World of Warcraft. I know, it's a shameful and disgusting thing, and I'll never be clean in the eyes of many of you out there, but stick with me. I have a point. Granted, that point won't justify this lengthy and, let's be frank, not particularly funny introduction, but I have a point at any rate. I'm going to tell you a story about me, and my recent first experiences with raiding. I joined World of Warcraft long ago in the ancient time known as 2010, shortly after the release of the Cataclysm expansion. Technically, I had played it briefly before then, but not enough for me to consider myself a World of Warcraft player. I'd tried it out a few times with brief free weeks during Burning Crusade, Wrath of the Lich King, and Vanilla, but never really been hooked into it. Even when I joined properly during Cataclysm, or Cata, I didn't really get sucked into the game. I mostly just wandered around doing quests, not understanding what the hell I was supposed to be doing, until I hit the level cap, and then I bailed until the next expansion. The endgame had never really been a thing for me, all the way up to and including most of Warlords of Draenor. By that point, I'd found World of Warcraft role-playing and was up to my nipples in the lore and the tie-in novels, a state which I still find myself in, by the way, reading Vol'jin Shadows of the Horde currently, and I felt fairly sure that I knew my way around the game and its world, but I still didn't really interact with the endgame content of WoW. I hung around in the garrisons, hitting buttons to wait to hit more buttons in the pseudo-mobile game Garrison Mission Malarkey, but still, the endgame eluded me. To me, the raids and raid progressions and heroics and mythics and flasks and pots and pans and timers and all of that shit was dark wizardry. The sort of thing that only madmen got themselves involved in. Number crunchers and capital G geeks TM were the only sorts of people who liked or even understood any of that shit. So imagine my surprise when I find myself looking for a raiding guild when I hit max level in Legion. Don't worry folks, there is a point, kind of. And I am getting there. Over the last few weeks, I found myself wandering the streets of the new Dalaran, posting requests in the public chat channels to find folks willing to take me into their guild so I could dip my toes into raiding. I tried a little bit of it in the past, using the raid finder Blizzard elected to add in the relatively recent past, but the variations of raid bosses offered in LFR are so simplified and dumbed down that they don't give you the proper raid experience. I understand why they're simplified and dumbed down. They're simplified and dumbed down so that dum-dums like me can give it a try and maybe then seek out raiding properly. Arguably, it's kind of a setup, kind of an introduction into raiding. Eventually, after a good long while of searching and finding precisely Bupkis, I finally found a guild willing to take me in and let me try raiding properly. We started with the Nighthold on normal difficulty. I had convinced myself that I'd not have too much trouble. LFR must have taught me something after all. Something that I'd be able to use to attempt to succeed at least partially. I just need to listen to the raid leaders and the voice chat and I'd be fine. To borrow a phrase, I was not prepared. Lingo was thrown around right from the get-go that I simply did not understand. I still don't understand most of it. I didn't have a damage counter at the time, but I was informed afterwards by the officers that my DPS was very low compared to everyone else in the raid. I died and others didn't. I didn't have any of the equipment or potions or buffs or anything that everyone else seemed to already know about and understand. At the end of my first proper raid, an officer pulled me aside and asked me why I thought my DPS was so low, and why I didn't have any of the stuff that the rest of the guild did. I had to inform him, had to be honest, I had no idea what they were talking about, and I had no idea what I was doing. I'd managed to step into a world utterly foreign to me, a lot more foreign to me than I had even vaguely considered it would be. Thankfully, some of the folks in my guild were willing to help. I was approached again later on while I was doing some daily quests by one of the guild officers. I was lucky in that they were kind enough to not only help me through some of the basics of how raiding works, but they also explained what the hell I was supposed to need in order to do it to any acceptable degree. They explained enchantments to me, something I'd never really thought about, informed me of the importance of gems and gem sockets, something I'd only thought about briefly in Cataclysm, but then never touched again. They even called in someone who'd been raiding for quite a while, as the same general build as my own character, a Demonology Warlock, to talk me through rotations and talents, and all the basic things I needed to know in order to play my class more efficiently. After this education, it became fairly clear to me that not only was I not playing my class inefficiently, but I was frankly playing it basically wrong. Not so wrong that I couldn't handle dungeons and quests. Frankly, you almost have to be trying to mess those up most of the time. I mean, really trying, to the point of purposeful self-sabotage, so intense that it's worth discussing with a therapist. Wrong enough, however, that when it was explained to me what I was doing, every fight I had in the game became orders of magnitude less of a ball ache. Armed with this new knowledge and one completed normal raid under my belt, technically, I went out and I gathered all that I needed. The person who had been kind enough to try to educate my dumb self offered me some enchantments and gems to increase the stats on my equipment. I googled the correct buff items, flasks, runes, food, potions, and such that I needed for my class and specialization. I went out and tested my combat rotation, my damage dealing abilities, to try to get myself ready for the next week's challenge. We entered the Nighthold again, this time on heroic difficulty. I was steady, I was confident, I had the right gear, I had the right enchantments, I had the right gems, I had the right buffs, I was ready for this shit. I was so ready for this shit. We met the first boss. I was not ready for this shit. I ran around like a headless chicken. I died on literally every boss encounter that day. Sometimes halfway through, sometimes near the end, but more often than not, right at the beginning, when something happened that I didn't expect, and I freaked out and ran around like a moron until I was swiftly put out of my misery. My DPS was low when I lived, and I died regardless. I was again called out by some of the officers after the raid. We spoke. I was given some more advice. I left. I studied now. I looked up boss guides. I double and triple checked everything. I did everything I could think of to prepare for the better part of a week. Then, the fateful day came. We re-entered the heroic Nighthold. I was ready for this shit this time. I was so ready this time. We met the first boss. And yeah, apparently, I was actually ready for this shit this time. I only died the once, not counting the times when our entire raid was wiped. My DPS was a lot higher, still on the low end, but I was keeping up with some of the other people in the guild. I wasn't the worst person, currently. We got through almost the entire raid, and I wasn't a complete liability. That was last night, at time of writing. The guild I'm in has a trial period, in which to determine who will and will not become members of the raid team proper. The last raid I get to take part in before that decision is made is tomorrow night, at the time of writing, a little while before the next raid, the Tomb of Sargeras, comes out. You've quite likely been watching footage of me in this run as part of this video. I don't know if I'll make it. I hope so. I do seem to be learning. Until recently, I thought raiding was for weirdos, number crunchers, and the aforementioned capital G geeks TM. Maybe it is, but regardless, I think I may be turning into one of them. I think I get World of Warcraft's appeal a bit better now. Fun times. Fun times. Oh, and by the way, I actually lied to all of you. There wasn't a point to this story, it's just a bunch of stuff that I did.